Hello, Watchman of Ephraim, or Rick. This video has to do with Mark 2:27. Hey, there it is, right? Mark 2:27. The Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. That's a quote from Yeshua, Jesus, Yehoshua, to the Pharisees, who were challenging him and his disciples about picking grain from a field. So there it is, right? Jesus is saying we have to keep the Sabbath, that the Sabbath was made for all of mankind, and we have to keep it as written by Moses, as the Hebrew Roots movement, the Messianic movement, and the now splinter groups of the Worldwide Church of God, which I used to be a part of, are saying. Is that what Yeshua, Jesus, is saying here? And I do say amen, that the Sabbath was indeed made for man, especially there are two huge fulfillments of the Sabbath. The millennial part, and the part where the Messiah comes into your life and begins to do all the work of sanctification, which I have covered. Anyways, there it is, right? Well, no. We're going to go through some points here, and again, I'm going to cover some familiar ground, but I have to cover this verse because I see it being witnessed by the Hebrew Roots Torah movement all the time. This is one of their big ones. And indeed, it is a mystery concerning how we get from what he quoted here, the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath, to the Pharisees, to Paul's writings, to where he's telling you to throw the old covenant out, which the Sabbath is the sign of the old covenant, by the way. In Galatians, truly this is a mystery. Instead of bending and twisting the scriptures, let me just go ahead and get out of that. We'll eliminate that. We need to examine what Paul says here in Ephesians 6:19. Pray also for me that whenever I speak, words may be given to me so that I will fearlessly make known, notice, the mystery of the gospel, or the mysterion, or the sacred secret, or the hidden truth of the gospel. Well, if you followed my channel, you know that right now it's the gospel right now to those who believe, to the elect, to the few, to the chosen, to the church or ecclesia, to the priesthood. Let's take a look at this word mystery. Let me get out of that one. Mystery. Something that is difficult or impossible to understand or explain. Similar words, puzzle, cause someone to feel confused because they cannot understand or make sense of something. Most people, when they read the Bible, they throw it down. I can't understand this book. Well, it was meant to be put in symbols, signs, allusions, allegories, similes, parables, metaphors, enigma. A person or thing that is mysterious, puzzling, or difficult to understand. Truly, the Bible and the gospel is a mystery. Instead of bending or twisting the scriptures, the verses, adding things in, like under the law, and they'll put in parentheses, under the law, parentheses of sin, to make something make sense, they need to examine what Paul says and what Yeshua said. To you it has been given to know the mysteries of the kingdom. God is making you play a game of Clue with His Word. I haven't had this picture lately of the game of Clue, if you've played it. Proverbs 25:2, it is the glory of God to conceal a matter. It is the glory of kings to search out a matter, or search out that matter. What's He calling you to become? Sons, huios, sons of God. And you have that status now. To reign as a kingdom of priests. Kings who are going to sit on thrones and rule over cities. To be given power to rule over the nations. Well, that's what this book is all about. Searching out the hidden truths, the secrets, the mysteries. So the Bible, once again, is like a game of Clue. How do we go from the, as written by Moses, this seventh-day Sabbath, to not being under it? Well, I mean, again, I'm going to cover some familiar ground, but I've got some points written down here. First of all, what did he mean if we're talking in the letter? What did Messiah mean by the Sabbath was made for man? Well, he came to fulfill the law, and that the law in the written code, the shadows, the dark sayings, shadows and types, that was given to him, and the Spirit opened up the spiritual end fulfillments. What did he mean by keeping the letter of the Sabbath when he spoke to these Pharisees and all these religious leaders who added hundreds of man-made laws to this weekly shadow Sabbath? For the Torah having a shadow of the good things to come, the Sabbath is a shadow. The weekly Sabbath is a shadow of the good things to come. Exodus 12. This doesn't directly address the Sabbath, but if you joined yourself to the nation of Israel, well, you would come under their laws. Exodus 12:48 through 50. Somebody who wants to keep the Passover. And when a stranger dwells with you and wants to keep the Passover to Yahweh, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And now notice, and he shall be as a native of the land. He shall be like an Israelite. For no uncircumcised person shall eat it. One Torah, or one law, one Torah, better translation, one instruction, one teaching shall be for the native born and for the stranger who dwells among you. So that's what Yeshua, Jesus, was talking about when he said the Sabbath was made for man. Anyone who wanted to join and become an Israelite had to become circumcised. That's the first step. One Torah shall be for the native born and for the stranger who dwells among you. But remember, the Torah, the first 5 books, are a shadow of the good things to come. So, if you wanted to join this nation of Israel, and indeed beginning in the millennium, when it all starts to count, the restitution of all things at the Day of Atonement, when the shadows begin to, in the next age, when it really all starts to count, when the antitypes really start to kick in, well, when the nations will join themselves to Israel. Many nations will join themselves to Yahweh in that day and become his people. Zechariah 2:11, 10 and 11. So you would become one as a native born of the land. You would be out here on the outside. Keep that in mind. Okay, if you wanted to keep this, you would you would become a native of the land. You would have to keep the Torah of Moses as written by Moses. You would have to keep the Sabbath. That's what he meant. The Sabbath was meant for man. That's where he got his words. And indeed, the fullness of this type, these people outside this shadow and copy of the heavenly things, will fulfill this in the next age. The antitypes who are coming. Let me get a sip of coffee here. Point number 2. Think not that I came to destroy the Torah and the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Okay? When he made this statement to the Pharisees, his disciples were with him, nothing in the Torah was fulfilled yet, other than him being baptized and being in the 8th day. As one who had authority over these people, all things have been delivered to me by my Father. Nothing in the Torah was fulfilled yet. When Jesus made that statement in verse 17 of Matthew 5, he was not saying, when he said, I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill, he was not saying that he came to be circumcised perfectly, that he came to keep the Passover every year in its appointed time perfectly. He did not to wear his tassels perfectly, to eat clean meat at all times, to speak perfect Hebrew, to look like a perfect Hebrew that crossed over. This is what he meant when he meant to fulfill the law. Luke 24. Luke 24, verses 44 through 46. And I could go a little bit before that, too. Verse 25. Then he said to them, O foolish ones and slow of heart to believe in all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not the Christ to have suffered these things? What things? Going outside the camp and being slaughtered, fulfilling the Passover lamb slaughtering, the very day and the very time on the 14th day of the month of Abib, the first month of the Hebrew calendar, of God's calendar. Ought not the Christ to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory? Now notice, And beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded to them in all the scriptures the things concerning him. Now let's just drop down to verse 46. Then he said to them, thus it is written, and thus it was necessary for the Christ, the Messiah, to suffer and rise from the dead, to suffer, to fulfill the Passover, as we shall see or hear, and to rise from the dead the third day. Rise from the dead the third day. What day did he rise on? And that repentance and remission of sins should be preached in his name to all nations, beginning at Jerusalem. Let me go up to verse 44. I didn't include that, but I meant to include that. That's the key. Then he said to them, these are the words which I spoke to you while I was still with you, that all things, now notice, that all things must be fulfilled, which were written in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms concerning me. And he opened their understanding that they might comprehend the scriptures. You know, just reading about a lamb being slaughtered in Exodus chapter 12, which we were just in, I just took you to, would you ever have understood that it was talking about a man? No. Let the Messiah interpret how he fulfilled and magnified the Torah. And this was just the beginning after he was baptized. He opened up their understanding. Hey, you know what? On the very day of the Passover, at the very hour, I was sacrificed. Get it? Okay. So, as I have witnessed many times, the feasts, which is the backbone of the Torah concerning the progressive prophetic revelations of progressive prophetic revelations of the Torah, the holy days are the backbone. And after 3 days, rise again from the dead. But now Christ has become the first fruits of those who slept. Resurrection, morrow after the Sabbath. All right, we have the beginning of these prophetic fulfillments. He what? He went from a man who was in the flesh to a spirit being. See, I have to cover all these things concerning the false Hebrew roots movement. So you're getting a lot of the few that watch these. You're getting a lot of the same, things. I'm running over the same old ground. He appears in heaven as a spirit being. He sits down at the right hand of the Father. He's the firstborn among the dead. He's the firstborn of a new creation. He fulfilled the law of circumcision. Morrow after the Sabbath, on the 8th day, he became, in fullness, a huios descendant, Son of God. Once again, the white beard, the white hair, the white garments, looking like he's the icon image of the Ancient of Days, the Father. All right. There was no fulfillments yet when he said this to these Pharisees. Nothing was fulfilled yet. I'm just looking at my notes here concerning the prophetic timeline. Okay. And once again, 50 days later, why 50? It's a jubilee for the first fruits. The 2 wave loaves, Pentecost, morrow after the Sabbath. What happened to you? Where did you go? It was initially fulfilled by the disciples on the appointed time, but those who have had the day of Pentecost, fulfilled in their lives, got it by faith on the day when they believed and were baptized. What happened to them? Well, they died, they ascended into heaven. And they became what? The two wave loaves. Both the Jew and the Gentile. You have to be yoked to the risen man, to the finished product, right? The firstborn of many brethren. Morrow after the Sabbath, once again, Pentecost, morrow after the Sabbath, 8th day, new creation. 8th day Sabbath, you got it now by faith. Nothing was fulfilled when Messiah said that to the Pharisees. Okay. If we are addressing it as the law, as the Sabbath, as written by Moses, of course, the law is a shadow of the good things to come, and Messiah himself was appointed to fulfill the Torah. Once again, you don't fulfill the Torah by keeping the Passover for Jesus, for Yeshua, on the appointed time every year. There's no righteousness in that. That is written for you, or for the Israelites coming out of the physical nation of Egypt. Okay. So, going on here, the priesthood, they're not under, they're not under the Sinai covenant. This is point number 3, the Sinai covenant. Yeshua, Jesus, was addressing those common land people who were under the Sinai shadow old covenant, the shadow of the new covenant that's coming at the beginning of the millennium. Picture a lot of Pharisees in here, whatever. Okay. The first fruit priests who have died and been raised into the heavenlies are under the covenant of circumcision. And this is the contention Paul had in Galatians. If you understand, if you don't add or take away from the progressive prophetic revelations of the Torah, if you don't begin to keep Christmas and Easter and Sunday as the Sabbath and all the paganism of mainstream Christianity, and if you study the Torah diligently as a shadow of the good things to come and believe what God says, you will understand these things these illusions, these mysteries will come to light. Galatians 3:19 and 20. You can keep the Sabbath if you want, and I will get into it, it will be kept again by the common land people, the antitypes that are coming in the next age, but there's no righteousness in it. You won't be saved by it. As I will conclude, when I conclude this video, I will witness once again who your Sabbath rest is. Galatians 3:19 through 20. What purpose then does the Torah serve, or the law serve? It was added because of transgressions, till the seed should come to whom the promise was made, and it was appointed through angels through the hand of a mediator. I don't know if I wanted that verse. Let's go to, this is what I really wanted, verse 15. Forgive me. Brethren, I speak in the manner of men. Though it is only a man's covenant, yet if it is confirmed, no one annuls or adds to it. What covenant is he referencing here? Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He does not say, and to seeds, as of many, but as of one, and to your seed who is Christ. And this I say, that the Torah, by the way, Abraham is a shadow of God the Father. Isaac, the seed, the promised seed, is a shadow of the Messiah. That the law, which was 430 years later, it doesn't say the law of animal sacrifices, as they always try to con you into. Just don't add, don't take away from it, and bring in the priesthood. Bring in Leviticus, which they don't. And it'll all make sense. This I say, that the Torah, which was 430 years later, cannot annul the covenant which was confirmed by God in Messiah. Wow, in Messiah. We're talking here the firstborn of Abraham, a shadow of God, the risen man. Paul always talks about the risen man. The finished product. The one who has died and raised and is seated at the right hand of the Father. For if the inheritance is of the Torah, it is no longer of promise, but God gave it to Abraham by promise. No one adds or annuls from it. What is this covenant tied into? Eighth, circumcision on the 8th day. Finished product. Finished product. Like father, like son. Like father, like sons. Huios, descendant. You are my son, today I have begotten you. You are my sons on Pentecost, which you got by faith, Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks. Today I have begotten you. Nothing was fulfilled when Yeshua made that statement to the Pharisees in Mark 2:27. Always remember that the gospel is a mystery. The Torah is a mystery. The Torah is a shadow. To fully understand how you get from having to keep the whole law of Moses to being a finished product, well, you have to study the Torah, and you have to study the priesthood, which dwelt in the shadow and copy of the heavenly things. Okay, finished products. Oh, no one adds or takes away from it. Galatians 4, this is why Paul said in Galatians 4, 21 and 31. Tell me, you who desire to be under the law, under the authority of the law as written by Moses, after you were redeemed from it to become a huios, son of God, a finished product. Galatians 4. 1 through 7, 8. For it is written that Abraham had 2 sons, the one by a bondwoman, the other by a free woman. But he was of the bondwoman was born according to the flesh, and he of the free woman through promise. Hagar and Isaac. Which things are symbolic? For these are the two covenants. Get rid of the word, I think it has it here. Omit the. Because it tries to make it sound like these are the two covenants, the new covenant and the old covenant. No, Paul's saying here, and it's plain, omit the. Okay, it was added in later. These are two covenants. The one from Mount Sinai, which gives birth to bondage. You have to do all this stuff. Getting physically circumcised, which is Hagar, right? How did Abraham have Ishmael? He had to work. He had to do the work, right? Him and Hagar. He had to work for it. But Isaac was by promise. For this Hagar is Mount Sinai. It's if you don't add or take away from the Torah, it makes sense. They're leaving a whole book out, Leviticus, and they're leaving a whole group of people out, the priesthood, the finished products, and therefore they have to bend and twist the scriptures, the verses, they have to do cherry picking, they have to do circular reasoning, they have to do proof texting to formulate their doctrine. For this is Mount Hagar, for this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and corresponds to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children. But the Jerusalem above is free, which is the mother of us all, for it is written, Rejoice, O barren, and so on and so forth. The Jerusalem from above, the shadow, the reality of the copy of the heavenly things. Now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are children of promise. But as he who was born according to the flesh then persecuted him who was born according to the Spirit, even so it is now. Verse 30. Nevertheless, what does the Scripture say? Cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman shall not be heir with the son of the free woman. So then, brethren, we are not children of the bondwoman, but of the free, because why? We are finished products in his eyes, fulfilling the Torah of the priesthood. That which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. There's nothing new under the sun. You will receive this full redemption on the Day of Atonement, at the last trumpet, when you are raised from the dead, if you are accounted worthy to attain that age of the priesthood. And no, once again, we don't go out and keep pagan holidays. You're to study the Torah because these are the things you're going to teach in the coming age. Okay. Well, number 4, you died. What does Paul say concerning the law when one dies? Romans, real quick here, Romans 7. Or do you not know, brethren, for I speak to those who know the Torah, the law, that the Torah, the law, has dominion over a man as long as he lives. But in chapter 6 of Romans, beginning, it shows that you died with him. Colossians chapter 3. If then you were raised with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ is, sitting at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, where the huios sons of God are, where God is. Not on things on the earth. For you, now notice, verse 3, for you died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. If you then were raised with who? The risen man. Seek those things which are above, which is primarily verse 14. But above all these things, put on love. What is God? What is the Ancient of Days? Which is the bond of perfection. These verses get trampled down now. Paul wasn't saying here, now that you're a finished product, it's okay to go out and keep pagan holidays. Once again, the Roman Catholic Church did not exist in the first century. That's what a Huios Son of God is all about. Put on love. These are seeking things that are above. A mature Huios Son of God. Where they and he, the Ancient of Days, dwells. You got to put the mystery together. You got to search it out. You died. That's why Paul said in Galatians, concerning circumcision, he said it was garbage. It's nothing. Physical circumcision is nothing. For in Yeshua, Messiah, Jesus, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision avails anything, notice, but a new creation. A new creation. It's nothing because you received the circumcision of Messiah without hands. Baptized into his death, raised with him according to the operation of God. None of this stuff was fulfilled yet. If you're entering into God's seventh-day Sabbath every week to be righteous, to be obedient, well, you know what? Now you're still in your flesh. You have not attained to the 8th day. Circumcision avails nothing but a new creation. If you bring the Torah of the priesthood in, it all makes sense. You don't have to bend and twist the scriptures to fit a paradigm that didn't exist in the first century. See, I'm pounding and pounding and pounding this because, well, in the future, I'm betting on these things bearing a lot of fruit. Number 5, who was the Messiah addressing? He was addressing the common land people. The people of the land, these Pharisees and these common land people are types. Even in Jesus' day, they were types. They were shadows. The antitypes of the common land people don't start until the Day of Atonement, when you, the priests, will be raised from the dead, and when these people assemble on the Sabbath, as I'll get into here, touch on, you will teach them, you will be his body, you will be his helpmeet, administering the new covenant and the end fulfillments of these laws, these shadow laws. You will expound. You will open up the scriptures as Messiah did to his disciples in Luke 24. You will open the Moses, the Psalms, the prophets, and you will expound to them these end fulfillments. They are going to fulfill what these common land people of Jesus' day and before the house of Israel and Judah didn't do. They will be under the rod of iron, the shepherd's rod of iron. They will keep the law as written by Moses, and you will teach them the spiritual end fulfillments. You will be the finished products who will teach the Torah to them. You will be the scribes. You will be the teachers. They will come to you. Picture yourself here. I know there's their children, but still. They will come to you in the white garments. You will teach them these end fulfillments. You will expound. You will open up the scriptures to them. And you will expound to them the meanings. Hey, what's the real reason why we keep the Passover on the 14th of Nisan? Well, Junior, son, your Messiah went outside the camp on that very day and he was slaughtered. And when you believe, you're teaching the little children here, and when you get mature here, or when you believe that what he did for you gets imputed to you by faith. And you, son, get to be released from the bondage of sin. That's what Egypt was a type of whom God put the whole world under. To bring them out in two phases. The wheat and the grapes. You, junior or juniors, and you, children, are the grapes. Okay? These people were under the old Sinai covenant, the shadow covenant. They were under the letter. Beginning with Messiah fulfilling the Passover, and then Shavuot 50 days later, the backbone of the prophetic revelations of Torah, progressive, began to be set in motion. You got to get out of the paradigm. If you can get out of that paradigm, which days do you keep? I eat clean meat. I wear my tie. You got to get out of the paradigm. This was not the debate in the first century. This debate didn't exist in the first century. Gospel's a mystery. Got to believe what Paul says. Got to be searched out. And the priesthood is not being searched out for the most part. Isaiah 66, 22, 23. These common land people are coming, which Jesus addressed. in Mark 2:27. Isaiah. 66. (22 and 23). For as the new heavens and the new earth which I will make shall remain before me, says Yahweh, so shall your descendants and your name remain. Now, this verse does not necessarily pertain to the next verse. This is the 8th day. He's telling you that as the 8th day will remain, so your descendants and your name to Israel, and also the whole world who joins themselves to Israel, will remain. Now in verse 23, he addresses the millennium. Because in the 8th day, when everything is made new, there's not going to be any need for the sun or the moon, because the God himself, his glory and the glory of the Messiah, and they're going to light the new Jerusalem and the earth for that matter. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, notice, all flesh shall come to worship before me, says Yahweh. Notice, all flesh shall come and worship before me. You don't have that status now. Right? Although we knew the Messiah in the flesh, we don't regard him anymore. We don't regard anybody now that's has the status of a priest. All flesh shall come and worship before me. The common land people will come. They will come to Jerusalem. This Mount Sinai, shadow of Mount Zion, this will be up here, exalted above all the nations. They will be coming, joining themselves, all the nations joining, and they will be coming from one new moon to another and from one Sabbath to another. I think the temple will be open on the Sabbath and the new moons and on the holy days. They will come. They're going to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. They're going to do all this. They're going to come to you, the priests who are not in the flesh. They will be in the 7th day. You are in the 8th day. The new creation will rule over the old creation. Tabernacles, the 1,000 years of peace, is part of the old creation. The 8th day here is the new creation. You got that now. You're in the 8th day. Once again. They will come to you, the masses, those that are in there, those that will have the status of the common land people, the people who will be ruled, they will come to you. They will, all the nations, the Sabbath made for man, all the nations will have to fulfill, well, Christ is the fulfiller, but they will fulfill the common land people in the millennium, which the Messiah will bring about. And you will teach them on the Sabbath what the Sabbath was all about. And what is the Sabbath? What will they learn? Who will they learn is their rest? Who is the one who gives the true rest? Who is the one who sanctifies? By you getting all the holy days applied to you by faith. Matthew 11. In conclusion, let's just isolate out 28 and 30. Come to me, all you who labor. Notice the word labor. He's quoting from the Torah, from the Sabbath commands. 6 days you shall work and do all your labor. 6 days, man, 6,000 years, man has been allocated to go his own way, to do his own thing and sin. And you on a personal level, that's corporately, you on a personal level, well, you've been given your 6 days of incompletion to go about your own way. But when you believe, well, you're made complete. All you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I will give you a cessation. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle, meek, or we can go to other translations, the best translation, humble. Wait, I am gentle and humble, here, lowly, humble in heart. He's quoting the Day of Atonement. On that same day you shall have a solemn Sabbath rest. You shall humble your souls. It's not the word for fast. And you will find rest. You will find a refreshing, translated Greek, for your souls. You shall humble your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Maybe I'll link the 3 videos I did on the Sabbath, how he fulfilled the Sabbath on a personal level. You get it when you believe. There's a cessation of your ways, your sinful ways, and your sinful pleasures. And you begin to do the things, well, things that are above. All right. So that's why Mark 2:27 does not apply to you in this present age. The age of the priesthood, the age of the firstborn ones. I've taken the Levites, Aaron and his sons. I've taken the Levites instead of all the firstborn of Israel. The Levites are mine. I am their inheritance. Once again, I am their inheritance, quoting Numbers chapter 3, among others. Numbers chapter 3, verses, I believe 5 through 52. I may be off a couple of verses there. I am their inheritance, right? You look like the Ancient of Days. You have that now, okay? You're not under this burden of having to do all that. You got it all through faith. Even the status of a priest. That's why Paul said, you're not under that yoke of bondage. You're a finished product. To learn what the Torah is all about so you can teach the common land people in the next age. Like how does the Sabbath get? Why do we keep the Sabbath? What did this point to? You're in front of them. You're in your white garments. You're in front of them. Well, you're not going to be in your glory, but you'll be you'll be teaching them. What does this weekly Sabbath point to? Well, you'll say on a personal level, you were a sinner, and when you believed, you were baptized. You cease from your own ways. You enter a solemn Sabbath rest, a Shabbat. And you begin to do the works, good works, the works of God, works of servitude. That's what a Huios Son of God is all about. Okay, so thank you for your time and thank you for listening.